And to tell you the truth, academic senates do not have a very good record of handling individual violations of academic freedom. AAUP chapters have a better record of doing that than of defending individual people's rights than academic senates typically do. The grievance procedures, such as they are, and they really don't deserve to be called that, they're in place in many campuses, simply amount to your right to ask the person who committed the grievance to reconsider. I mean, that's the grievance procedure. That's really the one that exists in Illinois, basically. The dean does something that he or she shouldn't do, and you have the right to go back and ask them to change their mind. This is not a grievance procedure. Of course, the increasing number of part-time faculty without tenure has made it even more important to build good grievance procedures across the country. Mostly, it does not happen outside collective bargaining. It's mostly collective bargaining contracts that tend to build good grievance procedures into them. 13, the one that I've decided my own campus is not guilty of at the moment, religious intolerance. And I probably don't need to talk about that one much more, but I think religious fundamentalism in many countries poses a serious threat to academic freedom, and we really may need to rethink what it means for doctrinally very conservative and strictly regulated religious institutions in our own country, whether they really amount to universities or not. Many religious institutions do. Faculty members do have academic freedom, but disturbingly, quite a number really do not, yet we still call them universities. 14, political intolerance. Of course, it's also an international phenomenon. In our own country, the culture wars have not helped, with the right wing's well-funded focus on classroom speech and campus life. But part of what I argue in the book is that in specific university settings, from political meetings to department meetings and hiring committees, political intolerance can come either from the right or the left. The left doesn't like to admit it, but I have seen it function in hiring committees often enough, both at my own institution and elsewhere around the country. Of course, on a larger level, something like increased terrorist attacks on American soil would clearly reduce public tolerance for campus-based dissent at the very neat moment when passionate but reasoned debate on campus as a home for the loyal opposition perhaps would never be greater. 15, legal threats. The federal courts are threatening to curtail both academic freedom and shared governance, especially at public institutions. It's not been well defended at private institutions ever, but it has had pretty good strength at public institutions. And unless the courts prove willing to carve out a special status for faculty, their current tendency to reinforce the authority of the state in its role as an employer is going to sweep up faculty in its wake. And we've been watching just how many of you are familiar with the Garcetti decision? Hey, that's pretty good. I've been in audiences where I don't get a single hand or foot showing evidence of familiarity with it. But we are continuing to get more and more extreme applications of the Garcetti decision, which basically says that speech about your workplace or about the practices of the administration is not protected if it's identified as one of your fundamental responsibilities. In other words, if the institution says, if a public university says, it's really part of your job to make comments on and evaluate campus life, gun governance, and administration policy. If they say that, then they're free to punish you for what they say. If they say, well, you can say what you want about this stuff, but you don't know a damn thing, and you certainly have no expertise, competence, or responsibility, then you'd be protected in making those statements. So it's a really bizarre situation that we're working to do what we can to resist, but so far the court decisions don't look good. And, this is one of the ones where I'm not eager to see a Garcetti case go to the Supreme Court. I think we could be in real trouble after that. 16, claims of financial crisis. The recession gives administrators the opportunity to claim financial crisis, whether or not it's true. Their plans often demonstrate they do not share the same values, priorities, loyalties, goals, and sense of mission as the faculty. Deciding how to deal with real or imagined financial constraints entails fundamental moral and ethical decisions. How well schools deal with those ethical issues, whether they're even willing to address them, most aren't, may depend on how staffing and compensation have evolved over the last 2 generations. To put it simply, a university that pays its president or its football coach $500,000 a year, and of course that's understating it for many campuses, an institution that has bought into huge disparities between salaries for humanities and business faculty, an institution that already pays contingent faculty members per course sub-minimum wages, which that's what this one does. I mean, payment for part-time teachers per course basis here is pretty much at the bottom end. I mean, probably they pay less in Uganda, but you know, from sea to shining sea, you're at the lower end of the spectrum. Such an institution, which includes your own, therefore, may be ill-prepared to address the ethics of employment in a crisis. How do you address the ethics of employment if you're already paying less than a living wage to some employees and you're paying a fat price to others? So nothing is more disingenuous in the context of an amoral salary schedule than an administrative declaration that we all have to share the pain equally. If the worldwide recession continues, and the odds that it will continue for the higher education sector for perhaps another couple of years, I think are very strong, we're going to face a basic decision. We're already looking at it. Do we exacerbate or ameliorate pay schedules and working conditions that are wholly unfair? Do we work to make them better, or do we succumb to making them still worse than they are? And still worse is the most likely result. In any case, the fundamental issue is how you spend the money you have. That's the issue. Everything else is nonsense. Everything else is a mirage, an illusion, and a shadow. How do you spend the money that you have? Do you as a faculty know how you spend the money that you have? Do you as a faculty know how much money you have? Well, if you do, you're unlike most faculties around the country. But you have a better chance knowing if you're unionized, and the dues that you raise through your union membership, which I realize is not an option for you, lets you hire outside consultants to do financial analyses of the institution. But there is no reason, if you had enough people in your AAUP chapter, that you could not hire someone from the outside to do financial searches and give you accurate, independent knowledge about the finances of the place where you teach. I happen to think your provost is an intelligent, interesting, well-meaning person, but she's still a provost. And you should have independent knowledge of the finances. It doesn't work to go to mama or papa and ask them to tell you, because no good administrator will tell you everything that you need to know. If I were an administrator, I probably wouldn't tell you everything that you need to know. You need your own independent sources of financial information, and you need to raise the money together as a faculty that enable you to have that so that you can then negotiate as equals with your administration. You can still be friends, but you can be equals, not patsies. Patsies aren't equals. So in this budget crisis, full financial information is the most important thing the faculty needs. Only collective action can solve this kind of problem. You have to combine careerism with some sense of community responsibility, and faculty identity needs to be reshaped to embrace both those components. Then you can act. Solidarity, sufficient membership in a group. We have AAUP chapters at private universities that negotiate salary increases. because their membership is a majority of the faculty. They have no legal standing to negotiate. There cannot be a contract signed, but we have chapters where the president agrees to a salary increase for the following year and honors it because there are enough faculty in the chapter so that the president shows the chapter the proper respect. So yeshiva makes a union impossible. Yeshiva does not make a very strong AAUP chapter capable of informal, but for all practical purposes, binding negotiations over salary and benefits with an administration. If you want it, you can have it. Don't bitch about your salaries if you're unwilling to organize, build solidarity in the faculty, and have majority faculty membership in a voluntary organization that has the strength to negotiate these matters.